Those who could no longer stop themselves, even under that lofty ceiling, began to whisper about the shocking absence. Finally, Mrs. Holland gave the Reverend a brusque nod. "It is with heavy hearts," Reverend Needlehouse began. It was all he managed to say before the arched door to the church went flying open, hitting the stone wall with a resounding bang. The ladies of New York's polite class itched to turn and look, but of course decorum forbade it. They kept their elaborately coiffured heads facing forward and their eyes on Reverend Needlehouse, whose expression was not making that effort any easier. For hurrying down the aisle was Diana Holland, the dearly departed's little sister, with a few shining curls coming loose from under her hat and her cheeks pink from exertion. Only Elizabeth, if indeed she could look down from heaven, would have known what to make of the smile disappearing from Diana's face as she took a seat in the first pew. So that's the first chapter, and if anybody would like to ask me any questions about Walden or the books or anything, I would love to answer them. That is the first chapter of the first book in this series. And the next book also has the first chapter, and it's coming out in January, at the end of January.
The action in the first chapter takes place at the end of the story?
Yes. So it's back and forth.
So how did you get the idea for your series? Where did you get the idea from?
Well, I was ghostwriting young adult books, and I realized that that teenagers seem to like to read about rich people. But I didn't know that much about rich people, and I thought that it would be easier to research rich people from from the past. Then I started going to the New York Historical Society in New York and reading old gossip magazines and etiquette books and histories of the time, and it really sparked my imagination. And then I began to see this interest in a gaudy world as a more complicated and a darker thing, and that was where this book came from.
How long did it take you to do the research?
Well, I did probably a year of research before the book sold. And when it sold, and I had tried writing, and as I was doing the research, I tried writing it a few ways, well, more than a few ways. It didn't work. And then when I did sell it, it was only a third of it had been written. So there was about a year there where, and I still do research while I'm, as a way of procrastinating and not actually sitting in front of my computer alone with myself. So it's sort of a continual thing.
How did you go about selling the book?
Well, I had been ghostwriting before, so I knew some editors and things, and that made it a lot less painful than I think it usually is to sell a book. I knew the people who bought it already.
Is that a standard practice, ghostwriting?
Well, many books are ghostwritten. I'm not the expert. I only know that I did it for another young adult series. But.
So there was an actual author?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
You were helping her.
Well, in my case, the series had already begun. So somebody had written a couple books, and then I picked it up when he left off. Though sometimes ghostwriters write for authors who don't write at all. And there are all kinds of arrangements.
How did you get that job?
I met somebody who I was working at Esquire magazine at the time, and she worked at the Oprah magazine, which are owned by the same evil corporation, and and so we met, and she then left to become an editor for young adult books, and so she had this series that needed an author, or a writer, not an author. There already was an author, so I was that writer.
What is your historical research? What kind of perspective has that given you on current society in New York?
Well, I think many people have observed that we're in a Gilded Age again, and
Or we're told
right, that. So, but I think that even now, a very small number of people, are spending money grotesquely on grotesque things, and I actually think that in doing the research, it seemed kind of, although there was a huge amount of, really abusive behavior by a very small number of people, that it seemed like a kind of simpler and more naive time, in a way.
I don't know if you've read any Edith Wharton or Henry James novels.
Never heard of those guys.
But did you come across any novels of the period that were interesting or contributed to your scholarship?
Yeah, I'm not going to tell you anything you haven't heard of, but I'd read Edith Wharton and Henry James in college, and I went back and read them again, and which was really great. If anybody has read Portrait of a Lady in college, they should read it again as an older person. It was a great experience. Reading The Age of Innocence again and The House of Mirth again was really fantastic and informative. And I did go back and read scenes over and over again to put my head in the right place. But I don't think I'm gonna be able to recommend some gem that you've never heard of. But everybody should go read those books again.
What's your relationship like with your editor?
We talk all the time. We're buddies. It's positive. We talk a lot before I start writing, and the books I write in about 6 months. So I really have to. There's no screwing up. Got to do it right the first time. So I talk to her a lot at the beginning. She helps me a lot at the beginning with getting the themes and ideas and plot right, and then once the editorial process is really short, and so there's it's a pretty intense, like college, cramming up all night, the two of us. But then in the middle we don't talk at all. I mean, mostly, except about social things.
How many books have you written before this?
Well, I ghost wrote those books. I ghost wrote 4 books, but this was my first book, and that was my second book, and the one that is not yet out is my 3rd book. But they're all the same characters, so they're all kind of one long book, bound separately.
And then you have a 4th book after that?
Yes.
Is that the last of that series?
Yes.
Do you have ideas for the next series?
Yeah, I'm thinking about another series, and hopefully, people will still buy books when that comes around. Who knows?